Here.
Mrs. Matlack.
Here.
Mrs. Seidel.
Here.
Mrs. Scarpolino.
Here.
Mrs. Schultz. Mr. Tomlinson.
Here.
Dr. Wong.
Here.
Dr. Dickinson.
Once again, welcome everyone, and we have a number of presentations that we have for tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Malash to go through those.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. So I'm very excited. We always look forward to in the fall when we recognize staff members with significant numbers of consecutive years of service to the school district. Tonight we're going to honor employees with 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, 35 years, and 40 years of service, continuous service to Cherry Hill Public School students for a total of more than 1,120 years of service to the community of Cherry Hill. So I'm very excited to welcome all the folks that are with us this evening. I'm going to ask Mrs. Wilson to join me up at the podium. Folks, when your name is called, we have certificates for everybody. If you would come up, we will shake hands. I will give you your certificate. You'll then walk through and shake the hands of all the board members, then the folks over on the side table. After everybody gets their picture taken, Mrs. Wilson will take you all out in the hallway and do a picture. We like to do a big group picture so we can put it up on the website. You are welcome to come back and join us for the remainder of the meeting, but you don't have to. But you're always welcome to come back.
Okay. Good. Try again? Okay, good evening. We're going to start with our employees with 20 years of service. I'm going to go ahead and read all the names. I realize not everyone's here, but I think it's nice just to acknowledge everybody. So, and these should be in alphabetical order. We will start with Shirley Armstrong. Come on up. Come on up. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Turn and look at Melissa. She's going to take a picture.
Despina Athenios. Anna Beans. Sarah Boone. Tracy Burkhart. John Cafagna. Cheryl Calabrese. Bernadette Calnon Wote. Barbara Caruso. Holly Chang.
Congratulations, Holly. Thank you for coming out. You're going to head over to Dr. Walker.
Janet Cohen.
Yeah,
Congratulations. Deborah Connolly.
Thank you so much.
Marie Davidson. Jeffrey Davis. Susan Dollarton. Donna Esposito. Bridget Garrity Bantle. Kimberly Gatlin. Florence George. Maria Greenwood. Gina Marie Haney. Christina Hughes. Debbie Cardon Duff. Jeffrey Killian. Denise Clifto. Paul Coaster. Beth Inez Korf. Athena Lange. Lainey Lipo. Jana Lashikian. Marissa Luciano Mateo. Megan Manns. Sue Mark. Thomas Maurer. Deborah McClure. Teresa Maloney. Araju Montgomery. Karen Morgan. Deborah Nemirovsky. Dorothy Nicoletto. Cynthia Neves. Nicole Overbeg. Teresa Paparo. Anita Plum.
Thank you.
Antoinette Princiotta. Maureen Purcell.
Thanks for coming out.
Daniel Rogers. Ann Sadell. Danielle Skibilia. William Segrest. Marie Smith. Joanna Stabile. Michelle Taylor. Deborah Wasson. Cynthia Wallen.
Thank you.
And Evelyn Weiss. And now we have our employees with 25 years of service. Elizabeth Alcamo. Lisa Badger. Leanne Bernosky. Linda Cherwinski. Linda Dilger. Kim Fisher. Amy Hawthorne. Maureen Masher. Joanne Riley.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And Patricia Roberta. All right. 30 years of service begins with Betty Brown. Elizabeth Diedelbaum. Helen Gallagher. Kathleen Olson. Linda Patterson. And Nori Rowan McGrath. And our last category, because I guess we don't have a 35-year category, do we? Okay, so we have our last category is 40 years of service. We have one individual, Patricia Ingelido. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And I've just been told that that is 40 years in the same building in this district. Which building?
Stockton.
Stockton. Okay. All right, we'll go outside and get a quick picture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is my husband, Richard. I got your stuff. Thank you. I guess I should have had you do announcement. You want to come to the board meeting tonight? I'll announce it tomorrow. I have to bring this in.
Don't look at my desktop.
Second presentation of the evening, Dr. Mahan, our Director of Curriculum, and some members of our Kindergarten Curriculum Committee are with us this evening. Dr. Mahan and some folks from the committee did a presentation to the C&I Committee a week ago. So they're here to do a presentation to the full board on an update on one of our most exciting projects that we are working on. And again, just to remind everybody, in September of 2019, we will be implementing full-day kindergarten in all 12 of our elementary schools. Yes, that's exciting, right? Applause is always good for that. We like that a lot. Something that has been 20 plus years in the making in Cherry Hill. Very formal in the discussions. Remember, it was one of the top 2 items that came out of the Cherry Hill 2020 work that we initiated a couple of years ago. And as a reminder, the Board of Education formally moved in October of 2017. to implement full-day kindergarten in all 12 of the neighborhood schools beginning in September of 2019. So, Dr. Mahan and folks, it's all yours.
So you all know who I am, so I will just say hello. I'm going to have my partner here introduce herself, and then we have one colleague who was not able to attend tonight, who I will introduce at the end.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Gina Winters, and I am a parent at Russell Knight Elementary School. I have a 4th grade son. I have a 1st grade daughter who has an IEP, and then I also have a 17-month-old who is a future kindergartner. So I'm really excited to be on the kindergarten committee, and I'm excited about the work that we're doing.
And our second presenter who was unable to be with us this evening, her name is Lindsay Abesh. She is a community member. And the reason why she is not here, and I think she said it was okay for us to say, she is expecting, so she will have a future kindergarten student. And she is currently a kindergarten teacher in a local school district, and she has experience with special education students, regular education students, ESL population. So both Lindsay and Gina have been integral in the kindergarten curriculum committee and the work that we have done over the last year. And it's nice to be able to have perspective, not just from me as the director of curriculum and a district employee, but also from the individuals who have been selected to participate on the committee. So as Gina said, you know, she does cover some of the things that we were looking for when we were selecting committee members. She mentioned she's a community member #1. She is a student who has an IEP. She has a vested interest in the work. She is a future kindergartner, all those things. So we were very intentional about the members who were selected to participate on the committee. So tonight we're going to offer you just a very quick overview of our work and what we have planned in the coming months to make sure that we are prepared to implement full-day kindergarten in September of 2019. So, let's see. Do you want to go to how's it going? All right, so we have like some notes here just to tell you first who we are, and then overview of the committee, which I just gave to you, and then function of the committee. So how is the committee going? So,
Sure. The committee's been meeting, I think, ongoing since last year. I was appointed to the committee in June, so I've been really working with the committee since we started up this fall. And so far, what we've really been doing is receiving information on topics that the committee deemed were important to investigate before implementing full-day kindergarten. So far, we received a presentation in September on social emotional learning, and that was from a parent and community member who is also a professor at a university who has expertise in that area. In October, we talked about OT and PT issues, and we had presenters including people who are employed by the district as well as outside people who have knowledge about OT and PT and how that should look in the kindergarten classroom. And then just tonight, we heard from another community member and a friend of mine who's also a parent in the district, but is a professor at Rutgers Camden and knows about ESL and bilingual issues. So I think so far we've really been hitting on some of the topics that people were concerned about looking at as we plan what a full-day kindergarten classroom is going to look like.
So again, I just want to go back. One of the things that Gina mentioned is that we've had these presentations on a month-by-month rotation to really highlight the areas that were presented to the committee that you wanted the committee to focus on. And Gina did mention, but each one of those presentations includes a person from the community who is an active member of the committee, as well as a committee member who is a district employee, because we wanted to make sure that we had voice from the community as well as experts from the community, and then also making sure that we are utilizing the people who we have currently in district. So again, in thinking about how the committee was comprised, being intentional about each and every member who was selected for the committee. So this evening, Gina already mentioned we had Dr. Dana Pilla, who is a professor at Rutgers Camden, who presented on language acquisition and ESL and bilingual education. Last month, or for social emotional learning, we had Laura Pendergrass, who is a community member. She is a professor at Temple University, and she shared her expertise with us. And the last member of the committee and the presentation we had was by Amy Gaines, and District OT and PT, again, a community member who was selected to be on the committee because of her expertise in the area of occupational therapy and physical therapy. So as a group, we have really worked to build consensus and think about all of the recommendations that came forward when we were in the planning phase. And hopefully Gina will be able to attest that it is not just, hey, we're the district, we're saying we want it to happen this way. We had a very interesting conversation today in regards to time allocation for each of the content areas and what the kindergarten structured day would look like. And there was a significant amount of input from all of the individuals at the table. And Gina, if you could just speak a little bit about parental or community voice in the process.
I think from what I've seen so far in the committee, I really think that a great job was done getting collaboration from, as she said, district employees and community members. I mean, I've definitely seen as somebody who was appointed just as a parent and a community member that when suggestions are made, the committee takes them seriously. One thing that I noticed that I brought up, I think in my very first meeting, was that we didn't have any representation from Barclay Early Childhood Center. And I realized that a lot of the things on the wish list that people were talking about for kindergarten were things that were already going on at Barclay, because I had 2 kids go through Barclay. So I said, you know, why don't we have somebody from there come here? And then that opened up an even larger conversation about how we transition kids who are from our early childhood setting into the elementary school. How do we build a bridge between Barclay and kindergarten? And so then the committee actually appointed a Barclay teacher to come and be part of the committee. And I think her input has been invaluable, talking about the ways that things like social and emotional learning are really integrated at Barclay and part of what they do every day. And maybe that's one of the missing pieces we want to add in as we move to full day K. So I do think that community members have a lot of great input and that our voices are being heard. I know that's a concern that a lot of people had.
Thank you. So how, you're probably thinking, you know, how are we even approaching the work? So we started last year and we addressed particular topics, and we built, if you turn your attention to the screen, a month-by-month calendar, and this is shared. All of the committee members have this, and we basically talk about our work in terms of completed, in progress. I changed red before I came up here, but I'm going to change it back because now it doesn't make sense. I'm going to put this back to hold. So because we have a significant amount of task to complete, and we approach the work in a month-by-month view based on all of the recommendations that came through from the committee. The second way that we are approaching our work is by subcommittees. So you will see at the bottom of the document I'm getting ready to share with you where we meet monthly as a committee, and now we are breaking out into individual subcommittees based on information that is shared at our monthly meeting. So you will see here, again, it was requested and a lot of discussion around social emotional learning. That was our first presentation that we had. Then we moved into a presentation on occupational therapy and physical therapy, gross motor skills, fine motor skills. I do want to just emphasize that in addition to the presentation that we have each month, we have an opportunity to discuss at least 1 or 2 additional topics. Today we talked about time allocations, or we revisited time allocations for each of the content areas. We always try to have something at the end. We ran out of time today, we didn't do it, but where we talk about, you know, what was something that resonated with you? How do you think we can move forward with this? And what stands out? What are next steps? So we have a period of reflection in each of our sessions. So you'll see we have budget conversation. That's the one that I have that's on hold because in order to implement this, I will be definitely asking for more money. Then we have, you know, the yellow ongoing, so presentations to the board. We have the purple are visitations to the other local districts that have full day kindergarten so that we can see how their programs are structured. So you see a lot of purple. It is the expectation that members of the committee participate beyond just coming to the meetings. So if you are not visiting a school, then you are presenting at a board meeting or coming to C&I or supporting a presentation at Zone PTA or working on one of the other subcommittees. So everyone, again, has an active voice in the work. And as we go down through the remainder of the year, you will see additional presentations, visits to schools, ordering of furniture, curricular updates, which we talked about today, And then some things that we know are going to be important in regards to professional development for teachers and making sure that they are prepared for a full day program and what that looks like and what our district expectations are. And then here are some of the additional tasks that need to be completed. So after each meeting, I feel like we leave with probably 2 additional things that we either have not considered or something that we did consider, and now is the time where we have to revise and update what we currently do. So the first one is development of a kindergarten readiness packet, and we talked about reaching out. It was actually Gina who talked about a program that they have through the Haddonfield Recreation Department, and some of our other local districts have programs to acclimate students to kindergarten prior to their first day of school. We have talked about if a student does this, these are some of the interventions that you can offer for OT and PT, and you'll see the names of the individuals who have offered to support that work. We've talked about OT and PT consults. What will that look like? What type of supports can be offered in the classroom? And then right now, revision of the kindergarten readiness assessment. What does that mean? What components should be included? So we have still a significant amount of work that needs to be done, but this has been our guiding document. And we just want to continue to work as a cohesive unit, make sure that all voices are heard, that we are getting community input. Today, I did share with the entire committee that we had received some email correspondence from one of the PTAs. All of that information was shared with the group so that we could all read the questions, review the questions, digest the questions, and then provide feedback on the questions. So it is something that we take seriously. So the community input and community voice piece is still very prevalent in terms of the conversations that we are having at our monthly meetings.
The only thing I think I would add, and this is something that I've sort of realized as we've been working through this, is that kindergarten is a really significant year developmentally for kids. I did a lot of work in graduate school on early childhood education, especially as it applies to preschool programs in the Abbott districts, the low-income districts. And this age level, there's so much going on, and that really guides what the committee decides about what they need for social and emotional learning, what's appropriate for a kindergartner with respect to OT and PT, and how does that affect their language acquisition? Where are they developmentally, and how do they learn language, and how can we support that? So I think the committee has a really good focus on looking at what a 5-year-old actually does during his or her day in kindergarten, what she needs to be able to do to be successful at that, what she needs to know, and putting in all these supports that as the kindergartner moves through his or her day, that those supports are there for him or her so that she can be successful at full day kindergarten. And I think it's such a blessing that now we have the time with the full day to do that and to really rethink some of the things that we've been doing to make things a little bit easier and more effective for our students. One of the comments that was made by one of the presenters is that you want to catch them before they fall. And I think that's such a key component, because you don't want to wait until you have somebody in 2nd grade who's really struggling. And maybe you could have made a simple intervention in kindergarten that could really have changed how they work and really could have helped things click a little bit earlier. So I think looking at it from a developmental perspective has really been great for the committee, and thinking outside the box as to we have this moment now where we can really consider what kindergarten could be in the district. And I think the committee is taking that seriously, and hopefully our work as it comes out will reflect that.
So that is all we have this evening. Again, I want to thank Gina for coming and presenting with me this evening. Also, a thank you to Lindsay, who presented at CNI, and they will both be presenting with me again at Zone PTA. I am indebted to the committee because they are doing a significant amount of work, and it is a tremendous task to take this on. Sometimes we joke in the committee and say, this is definitely what is keeping me up at night, because I want it to be successful. We want our committee to look successful. We want to make sure that we are having a significant impact on the students of Cherry Hill Public Schools, and we want the experience for our incoming kindergarten students to be excellent. So we do take the work very seriously, and we are excited about the future opportunities because, you know, our work does not just end with the formation of this committee when September comes. That committee work will continue past September because we need to always be mindful and reflect and think about what can we do to continuously improve. So I thank you for your efforts and for your work. And, you know, jokingly, my last comment is that today one of our presenters came in and I told her, you know, your day job is really interfering with your volunteer work. So, you know, we need you to be here all the time, just jokingly, because, you know, everyone, you know, our community members and our teachers are really giving of themselves to make sure that this is successful. So, yeah, any questions? Go ahead, Mrs. Judd.
So, as a board member, this is absolutely exciting to hear about these plans. I do have one question regarding visiting West Windsor, Plainsboro, and I'm assuming Egg Harbor Township was EHT.
EHT.
Egg Harbor. Are we visiting any Camden County schools that offer full-day kindergarten?
We are. So
yeah, okay.
we actually have visits set up for Collingswood,
Okay, good.
Lindenwold, and again, talking about being intentional. So those districts were selected for a specific purpose. So Lindenwold has a high ESL population and they offer full day program. So we will be looking at how do you offer that? What does that look like now? Because that is not the model we currently have. We're looking at Collingswood because that was one of the districts that we had gone to a few years ago and gathered information, and they revamped their entire program. We have people going out to Medford, Collingswood, Lindenwold, West Windsor, because we do have some districts that historically the board has asked us to look at those programs. So we tried to do a nice combination of programs that we were looking to build and then programs that we wanted to compare ourselves against.
I just thank you for your work, and again, this is very exciting for the district. It really is.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Farah. And thank you, Gina. I really appreciate the work that you and the committee, please take it back from the board and the rest of us. Grateful for the work that y'all are doing and continuing to look forward to the additional presentations with what we are looking at moving forward. So for our third and final presentation this evening, I'm very excited to reintroduce to everyone Mr. Anthony Saporito, who is our District Director of Security. In some ways, Tony's job has changed more in the last year than almost anybody else's in the school district. The job in some ways that he interviewed for in terms of supervision and management is not the job that he currently holds today. We are grateful for Tony's work and for the time that he has spent as we have transitioned from a school district with 4 unarmed campus police officers to a school district with 9 armed campus police officers, the only public K-12 school district in the state that has its own sworn law enforcement police department, really, that Tony oversees. So Tony's doing the annual presentation, what used to be known as the Violence and Vandalism Report. So I'll turn it over to him. I'll have some comments at the end, too. He'll go to tell you a little about the structure and why it's a little bit different this year as the state continues to manipulate their information.
That they do. Thank you, Dr. Malash. Mr. Goodwin, thank you, board members, staff members, Dr. Smith. Thanks for the time tonight. We do apologize for the 1-month delay. This is usually done in October. As I reported to you last year, the Electronic Violence and Vandalism Reporting System, EVVRS, which was around since I came, was dumped by the state quite abruptly, and the student safety data system, sometimes school safety data system, all according to what DOE document you're reading, is now in place. The problem is they put it in place in September of 18, so I'm sorry, September 17, but they never developed any reports to extract the data of the over 300 SSDS forms that I inputted over last year. So they offered me, I asked them where the reports are, they said, oh, we're still developing them. So they've taken a long time to develop, and hopefully when they come out, they'll be really good reports. But for right now, I have the raw data for just the number of incidents that reported and what category they break down to. They break down to the 6 major categories. I don't have anything on the subcategories because the reports aren't developed yet. So that's where we are. That's where we're at. That's what you see there, the student safety data system for last year, which was its first year in existence. The only thing that's added category-wise as a main category is that last one that I have highlighted there, and that's the alleged HIB. Before, we did not track alleged HIB, just the HIBs that were confirmed by the board, and now we have added that. Well, we haven't, but the state DOE has added that category, and that is as of September of last year. So we captured all the data from last year and are capturing the data from this year. And the legislation involved with the school violence and the DOE's Office of School Preparedness has us present to the board once a year to make sure that you are up to date and up to speed on what's going on. So what's new in SSDS? First, as I said, the HIB alleged category was added. These next three major bullet points with the ones underneath them, what they have tried to do is take the wording that they used before and try to align it into Title 2C, which is criminal law in New Jersey, to have the verbiage the same between the SSDS and the Title 2C, just in case there's charges to any of these things. So the first thing is a couple of things are removed: burglary and fireworks. I don't know what the rhyme or reason was for that. Burglary is something that's going to happen exclusively after school hours. Anything other than that is a trespassing, which is still in there. But the burglary category was removed. Fireworks, I don't never think we had any in the 4 years, so that was removed. What was added under the vandalism category, those two are both under the vandalism category. What was added under the vandalism category is computer trespass. That's actually a state statute, and that's computer trespass to the district's computer. So if somebody came in and decided they were going to try to hack into our computer system, we have that would be reported in SSDS, but also more seriously, there would be a criminal charge to it. There were some incidents combined in the violence category. Robbery and extortion were robbery and extortion. Now, instead of underneath one another, they're next to each other as one category. Again, we've never had any of them. Bomb threat, fake bomb, fire alarm offenses, which is fake fire alarm, have all been combined now into false public alarm category, which is the charge in the state 2C statutes, false public alarm for any of those things. Sex offenses have been broken down into two categories: the sexual assault and sexual conduct. Before, it was just sex offenses. There is also some other subcategories under there to explain them, but that's the two major categories. Again, to align with 2C. The substance abuse substance use, is now into two categories: substance use confirmed, substance use expected, but the exam was refused. Last year, I'm sorry, not last school year, the EVVRS, everything was combined under substance use confirmed, even if they didn't take the exam. It was still considered confirmed. So now they broke that out, and there is a couple more categories under their paraphernalia and possession, which haven't changed. So now we get to the numbers. As you see, I like to keep a five-year breakdown of the numbers. The violence numbers this year: the violence category 29, vandalism 8, weapons 3. And I like to make sure that you know what the weapons are. All 3 weapons were knives. One was a box cutter, 2 were folding knives. None of them were used in an offense. They just happened to be in the possession of the person that had them for whatever reason. One was a child that happened to show it to somebody else. One had it on the possession when they were confronted by campus police for drug possession, and the other one was just the same as the first. Somebody just happened to have it. It was seen by an administrator or a staff member. Substance use 13, HIB confirmed 80, and I'll get to the alleged in a minute. That's a separate category now. I think these numbers are nothing's out of order with the other years. I mean, there's going to be peaks and valleys in any numbers. So, Mr. Judge,
Do you want us to wait, or can I ask a question now?
no, you can ask now, sure.
So, I'm intrigued by substance use 16, 17 of 54 and it dropping to 13, because there are students that have accused us of not being honest with the numbers, and that's interesting. Is there a reason?
I would like to think that it's because of awareness, it's because of enforcement, it's because of staff members being more vigilant and taking those opportunities away from areas in the schools, and this most of the drug use is the two high schools and an alternative high school. Very little below that. You might have a stray somewhere in the middle school level, but that's about it. But that's what's reported. It's reported at the building level, and that's what we had. I think Dr. Malash and I had a conversation about that at the end of last year.
We did. Just one other thing to add. At times people make accusations that aren't factually based, that are rumor based. People know some information. They don't know all information in terms of what goes through. The other thing that I'll tell you about 2016, 2017 is that there were two significant events with substance where there were multiple children that were involved in individual incidents that took place that pushed those numbers to where they were as well.
Yeah, up in I think 2 events or over 20 people were involved in 2 events. It was leaving the school grounds type incident, so that did definitely inflate them last year. Any other questions on the numbers of the incidents? The reason that if you do the math on that last column, it should come out to 133. It's 131 because 2 of those incidents, it was one incident that ended up in 2 categories. So, for instance, the one that I definitely know about without the subcategory reports that aren't done is the one person had a knife and had possession of CDS. So that's why they count as one incident, but there's 2 different categories that they were involved in. So here's the HIB incidents in and amongst themselves. Pretty steady numbers from the past years, 80 this year or last year, compared to the 71 and 16, 17, 87, and 73. HIB alleged, which is the number that pops out, is 236. Dr. Malash, I believe there's something that legislation passed this year, right, about if it looks like it's not going to be, there's no chance it's going to be an HIB, it doesn't, you don't start the investigation.
Yes, there's an administrative review that takes place, right? So there's a rubric that's measured, because there are some allegations that come through at times that just based on their face, the administrator will take a look at. If they're not going to fit any of the categories in terms of what the statute requires, then it does not get investigated as an HIB.
I'm sorry, Ms. Judge.
I'm sorry. Actually, when we have over 11,000 kids, 236 isn't horrible. So that's nice to see.
Actually, any of the numbers extrapolated over 11,000 students are good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This is, and I only see a 3-page form that comes to me to explain the circumstances of this, because I have to upload it into the DOE system. But the SACs in the buildings have, they do a unbelievable amount of work in these to make sure that they are alleged and not confirmed, and that all of our children are getting a safe environment to learn in. And they deserve a lot of credit for this. They do an unbelievable amount of work to get these investigations wrapped up. So I just wanted to put a little plug in for our student assistant counselors there, on all whoever works on them in the buildings other than them. And you see the reason why we're good at it, as Mrs. Judge pointed out, ongoing training. DOE always has training. Part of our school safety specialist training that we went to was on HIB. So now we have Lynn and I, who are the school safety specialists, got a little bit of it. The protocols, the reporting criteria, all that stuff is what's driving these to these numbers. And as I said, the 17-18 school year tracking of alleged HIB incidents is now part of the report. So move on to our safe school practices. I highlighted a few here. I think I used the wrong color font because it's really hard to see the ones that I highlighted. It looked much better when it was on a smaller screen in my office. I think the ones that pop out, of course, is the expansion of the campus police officer program to the elementary and middle school levels. I'm sure this is wood, so I'm going to knock on it. So far, it has been received tremendously. It's gone very, very well. There's been great feedback. I ask my guys all the time, feedback from parents, feedback from staff, administrators, and students. They've gotten nothing bad back yet, nothing bad back. It's all going great. All campus police officers are now armed. As Dr. Malash said, there was 4 unarmed officers before, and now there are 9 fully armed officers. Continued visits by CHPD. They come to the campuses, they park out in front. Sometimes they don't get out, sometimes they get out and walk around the building for a half an hour. It's all according to how busy they are. But they make every effort to get in front of the schools, at least for visibility and then just for safety checks. They walk around the outside because there's 2 officers that do the elementary building, so it's a little tough to get around to them. Campus police officers. So the township police continue to help out, and I thank Chief Monahan and all the staff officers there for that. A little plug to the alma mater there. I'm sorry, I did that one. Mandatory training for campus police officers. There's de-escalation training that all 9 officers have been to. There's an SRO certification that they must go to. A little tough getting them into that because it's all over the state, and by the time we go through the approval process through the board, the classes fill up. So I had to move 2 guys from Camden County to Middlesex County. I am no longer on their Christmas card list because instead of going to Gloucester Township, they have to go to, I don't know, someplace in Middlesex County. So, but we're getting them all certified in that SRO school. It's also legislation. It is, it's mandatory. School safety specialist training just initiated by the DOE the beginning of last school year. There's an actual DOE sponsored academy that myself and Ms. Sugars have gone to. It was interesting. The way it was presented, because it was presented towards school administrators, not so much towards law enforcement. I'm sure Lynn and I have a different view on the training that we went through. But we are now school safety specialists in the eyes of the DOE, and this also has a component of continuing education. That there's a certain amount of hours that have to be done each year to keep the certification up. Our memorandum of agreement with the Cherry Hill Police Department and Camden County Prosecutor's Office, which always seems to be delayed every school year, and it is this year. That's a document that is just guarantees and ensures a free exchange of information between law enforcement agencies and the school district, and vice versa. We just got notified by Camden Metro Police Department, who I would imagine is rather busy. They notified us of them arresting one of our students through this memorandum of agreement. They are required to do it so that we know what's happening with our students. Zero tolerance for weapons and substance abuse category offenses. If it's appropriate, criminal charges are signed, and if not, then school discipline is enforced on that. We have our passive alcohol sensor program that expands every year. I believe there was policy change earlier this year with that to clean that up. And of course, our district-wide protocol for all exterior classroom doors to remain in a locked position at all times. Interior and exterior doors are locked at all times. Conducting drills during unconventional times, which is legislation as of 2 years ago, lunch and recess. It's really easy to do a lockdown drill when all the kids are in the classroom. It is much harder to do a lockdown drill when there's 100 kids in an auditorium or 100 kids in the cafeteria, but through 30 years of doing this kind of stuff, it never happens when the stars are lined up. It usually happens in the snow, in the rain, in the wind, in the heat. It never happens when it's a good time for everybody. And of course, the security initiatives that are included in the bond referendum that have been expertly spoken to by Ms. Sugars and Mr. Middleton. Who's involved in all this? Well, it's all of us. There is not one component here that you see up on the screen that can be taken out without it being a success to keep our children, our students safe every day that they're here. Of course, the board, parents and student, teachers and staff that do a tremendous good job, the school administrators, the principals who I deal with on a one-to-one basis every day are just fantastic. They do a great job. Phone calls all the time, and it always starts usually with, I got a question to run by you, which is great. I love it. I want you to run the questions by me, and we figure it out. Our PTAs, which I've spoken to a number of times, campus police officer and security staff, like I said, I can't thank the group that was hired in September and the 4 that have been here for a while. Just done a great job. They know the mission. They know that the number one thing is the safety of our students. The number one thing. It's not arrests, it's not numbers, it's not any of that stuff. It is the safety and security of our kids. And of course, can't do anything without the police department, the fire department, the EMS component of the fire department, the townships support that they've given us. as we've transitioned into the campus police officer program, and of course the community, which makes up all the rest, all above it. Any questions, folks? That's it. Because, like I said, our subcategories are not here. Once those reports are developed, and I don't know when that will be. There's an email in. They said they will let us know. However, Dr. Malash would like to handle it. I can print the reports for him, get it out, and I can come back and redo the subcategories, whatever you guys feel is best. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry. This may be better answered when we have the subcategories in front of us,
Yep.
but as you may be aware, there's a parent education program on vaping later this
Yes.
week, tomorrow. And I'm just wondering, is that a trend that is,
Yes.
that's our biggest
Yes.
area that you're seeing at
It
the
is.
high schools?
Yep. It is, and again, the spots are being identified. Not only the campus police officers at the high school level, but also the security staff at the high school level keep an eye on those areas. They spend extra time in those areas, but it has, we've had incidents of that this year. Yes.
Right, tomorrow night over at Beck, right? 7 p.m. at Beck is a presentation that's going to be done. We encourage everybody to come out to see it. Vaping is an issue, and we keep telling folks all the time, there's not a child in our district that is eligible to be able to purchase a vape or a vape tool or the cartridges or be in possession of them. Not a child in the district.
It was interesting that it gets brought up. I heard a public service announcement today from the Juul company itself, talking about that kids shouldn't be anywhere near it, kids shouldn't be buying it, parents should be watching, make sure the kids aren't. So maybe there is a little bit of responsibility on the manufacturer and the companies of this too. So hopefully it'll work.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Ms. Matlack?
Yeah, I would be. It's on. I would be interested in having you come back when you have the reports on the subcategories.
Absolutely.
And
Be glad
report
to.
that back out to us.
Certainly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. And now, before we continue, we are going to have our first public discussion. There will be 2 opportunities to discuss, to have comments for this first public comment session. It has to be on items that are on the agenda. So if anyone has any comments or question or comments on items on the agenda, you can now feel free to come up and express that. Okay. So if not, then we're going to go ahead and move into our special action agenda. And I'm going to ask Mrs. Seidel to start off with the curriculum and instruction.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, approval of attendance at conferences and workshops for the 2018-2019 school year. Number 2, approval to amend ESEA 18-19 budget to reflect carryover funds. And number 3, approval to amend IDEA 18-19 budget to reflect carryover funds. Do I have a second? Mrs. Judge, is there any questions or comments? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Mrs. Seidel,
Yes to all.
Mr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mrs. Judge,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Matlack,
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpolino,
Yes.
Mr. Tomlinson,
Yes to all.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Seidel. And moving down to business and facilities, Mr. Tomlin, will you move that agenda?
I will, Mr. Goodwin. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, approval of bill lists. Number 2, resolutions. Number 3, submission of comprehensive maintenance plan and M-1. Number 4, transfer of current year surplus to reserve. Number 5, resolution for the award of bids. Number 6, resolution for the award of change orders. Do I have a second? Mrs. Matlack, are there any questions? Mrs. Judge.
Mrs. Sugars, can we have a little explanation on number 4, the transfer of current year surplus to reserve? Thank you.
So typically, at our last board meeting in June, we pass a resolution that authorizes the board to move up to $5 million into the capital reserve account. And this happens as part of our annual audit process. As you know, as a school district, we are only allowed to maintain a very small fund balance. It's basically 2% of the prior year expenditures. So when we have surplus that goes beyond that very small fund balance, and typically our unreserved fund balance over the past couple years runs anywhere from 3.8 to maybe $4.3 million. So obviously that's a very small fund balance for a district this size with a $200 million budget, but it is the maximum that we're allowed to maintain. So when we have fund balance that goes above that number, we appropriate it into the capital reserve account. So in June, we passed a resolution that said we could move up to $5 million into the capital reserve account. We, as we're going through the audit process, have learned that we have a little bit more than $5 million. So we're authorizing an additional amount up to $2 million that can go into the capital reserve account. One of the reasons that we have some more than we had anticipated, we received more extraordinary aid last year than we had anticipated. We also did a mid-year budget, a mid-year switch to our health benefits to a lower cost plan. So we have some things that happened last year that are leaving us with a little more fund balance than we normally do. So, so this will allow us to put that money into capital reserve. As we go into this referendum process, we know that there's lots of projects that didn't make the cut for the referendum that we know we still need to do. So the more that we can get into capital reserve, the better. But this will allow us to put up to $7 million into the capital reserve account that we can use in subsequent years for capital project type things.
Any other questions? Okay, Mrs. Sugars. I need to abstain from Bancroft on the bill list. Yes to the remainder.
Yes.
Mrs. Judge?
Yes to all.
Mrs. Matlack?
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel?
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpolino?
Yes to all.
Dr. Wong?
Yes. Okay, thank you, Mr. Tomlinson. Next, Mrs. Judge, will you move the Human Resources Special Action?
Yes, I will, Mr. Goodwin. Thank you. The superintendent recommends and I move the following. Number 1, termination of employment certificated. Number 2, termination of employment non-certificated. Number 3, appointment certificated. Number 4, appointments non-certificated. Number 5, assignment salary change certificated. Number 6, assignment salary change non-certificated. Number 7, other compensation certificated. Number 8, ratification of CHASA contract. We have 2 things I need to mention. One is the additional pink sheet. We're adding to numbers 3, 6, 7, and we're adding a number 9, other compensation non-certificated. And then I need to remove a name. Item 4A, the 4th name down, we need to remove the name Barbara Adedin. Do I have a second? Mrs. Matlack. Too overwhelming. Any questions on any of that? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Actually, sorry.
Oh, yes. Yes, Mrs. Seidel.
Mrs. Judge, I had a question. So I had a question that might other board members might have as well. So I just noticed in reviewing the agenda, the HR portion of the agenda, that there was a lot of, I'll call them asterisks, which mean that there were out of district employees being appointed to some of the athletic stipend positions. So I was just curious a little bit about that process. And then I also noticed, and I think this is a real positive for our kids, the non-stipend volunteer aid positions. And again, just curious a little bit about that process.
Dr. Malaj?
Sure. Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
So we
Thank
go
you.
through a posting process for any of the extracurricular positions that exist. I believe that, and I've gone through with Mr. Brow as our Director of Athletics. I think there are 5 head coaches in our sports across the 3 seasons. who come from out of the district. It's always ideal. We have folks that are in the district. It's the same number that we've had over the last couple of years. There are a handful of assistant coaches that are from outside the district as well. But it's a yearly stipend process that goes through to come in. I would say that we are probably on the lower end of out-of-district employees who coach in Cherry Hill compared to some of our surrounding districts. Again, the ideal is that every coach in our district is also an employee in the building. That doesn't always work, right? Because we have to post and get people to interview. The athletic aides, so there's a process that we go through. If we have somebody that wants to volunteer with one of our athletic programs, there's an approval process, right? It's guidelines that we follow as a school district. We follow the statute or the guidelines that are set up by NJSIAA, which is the governing body for athletics in the state of New Jersey. Person has to get a substitute certificate. They have to be fingerprinted. They have to go through that to come in. We are always there. There have been a number of volunteer athletic aides, is the position, is what it's called, but they have to be formally approved, or they can't be working with the kids, to go through. So yeah, that's absolutely a positive.
Thank you.
Mrs. Sugars.
Mrs. Judge?
Yes to all.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Matlack?
Yes to all.
Mrs. Seidel?
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpolino?
Yes to all.
Mr. Tomlinson?
Yes to all.
Dr. Wong?
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Judge. And next, policy and legislation. Mrs. Scarpolino, will you move those items, please?
Certainly, Mr. Goodwin. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following: approval of harassment, intimidation, bullying investigation decisions. Do I have a second? Mrs. Seidel. Are there any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Mrs. Scarpolino?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Judge?
Yes to all.
Mrs. Matlack?
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel?
Yes.
Mr. Tomlinson?
Yes to all.
Dr. Wong?
Yes. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Scarpolino. We don't have any strategic planning items under the special action agenda. So next we're going to move to our board work session, and we'll start with curriculum and instruction, and Mrs. Seidel.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. So as usual, I'll try to be as brief as possible. We had a packed agenda. We had our last curriculum and instruction committee meeting on November 5th. And as you guys all know, we're taking our committee meetings on the road. So we were very happy to be at Johnson for our latest meeting. So we had a couple of items that we discussed. The first was we talked about the 2019 course of study booklet. This year, the booklet will be electronic. We can expect to see the final product to the full board in January. The first 20 to 30 pages, if you all remember taking a look at it, are in the process of being revised to eliminate outdated information, and there'll also be a quick reference guide up front as well. So I personally am excited for it to be electronic. There will still, of course, be copies available for folks who need a hard copy. There'll be hard copies in the guidance office as well. Second, we talked about technology updates. Dr. Mahan gave us an update on these technology initiatives. I'm sure you will all remember that last year Chromebooks were distributed to all certificated staff with specific expectations for the staff to use this technology. So there's been a significant amount of professional development offered to the staff to use for use of these devices. There's been some ed camps permitting teachers to self-select into workshop options. And I think Dr. Mahan said the sessions on how to use the technology were among some of the most popular that our teachers attended. We had an opportunity to see a great, some pictures and a slideshow showing examples of how technology is being used in our district. For example, interactive devices in our classrooms like the smart boards, although I think they're called something different than smart boards now. But we got to see some really cool stuff. Overall, I think the message is that as a district, we're certainly looking to expand our technology blueprint. But I think Dr. Mahan did a really good job of sharing with us that doesn't really just mean laptops and Chromebooks. It's a lot more than that. And a really great example was, and I know Dr. Wong, you were excited about this one. We saw children using virtual reality goggles in the classroom, and that was really cool. And we actually heard about that in a previous curriculum instruction meeting for another class where virtual reality goggles were being used. So, so there's a lot of exciting stuff happening, and I thank you for the update on that. I'm sure we'll be able to share the pictures if you're all interested in seeing them. They were great. We also had 2 theatrical productions that we talked about. Both of them were reviewed and approved as part of our ongoing theatrical review process. We have Aladdin Jr. happening at Beck Middle School on March 29th, 30th, and 31st. And we have Wizard of Oz at Carusi Middle School on April 12th and 13th. So I'm sure as that gets closer, we'll get lots of reminders to go out and see those great events. We also had an opportunity to hear about the Subaru Loves Books donation. This is a donation that has been several years. Dr. Mahan, how many years have we been receiving the donations from Subaru? At least 5 years. So what happens is that as cars are purchased at a local dealership, there's a certain number of books that will be donated back to Cherry Hill Public Schools. And so Mr. Goldthorpe was able to select over 150 books for our district from K to 12. There was a ceremony held at Rosa International Middle School, and I don't have the date written down. That was just earlier last month in October. And the focus of the book donations this year was to support science education. So we're very thankful to Subaru for the donations. And I have a list of the books if anyone is interested in seeing those. We also talked about report cards. So following the rollout of the PARC scores, receiving the PARC scores electronically through Genesis earlier this year, the district is also going to provide report cards electronically through Genesis for at the secondary level grades 6 through 12. So principals will be sending an update out to the school communities. They'll also update the PTAs so that the PTAs can help disseminate that information. I know Dr. Mahan is going to provide an update to Zone PTA as well. So the in fact, this is probably happening right around now, but the last actual printing of secondary report cards will be held after the first marking period, and then going forward, they'll all be sent electronically. So I know as a parent, I'm really excited about that. As I spoke about at the curriculum instruction meeting, I really like the opportunity to review the PARC scores online, and I could go back and look at previous scores. So hopefully I'll be able to do that with report cards as well. I know we talked about we were going to follow up on that, but I'm excited to see that. I think some of our parents will be too. There will, of course, be a form to request hard copies for those that still want and need a hard copy, and the documents will be uploaded as PDFs so that they can be printed by parents if they so desire. We also spent a significant amount of our time talking about the kindergarten curriculum committee update. So I know we had a great presentation on that. So I, again, just want to thank Dr. Mahan and Gina and Lindsay for their hard work and for the great presentation. And then just to reiterate for those watching at home that Zone PTA will be getting an update in December on the kindergarten curriculum committee work, which they in turn will share with their PTA presidents. And then again, as a board, we'll receive an update in April. So for those that are interested in this topic, April would be the next C&I committee meeting that would be helpful for you to attend. We had a few follow-ups that we talked about. We hope to get an update next month at our C&I meeting about Mrs. Atkins' backpack program that she rolled out last month. So we're all excited for a follow-up on that. We are looking forward to a follow-up on our discussion about some of the humanities courses at the high schools. And then Dr. Wong asked about our teacher coaches and how many of them we have in the district. And we could potentially have discussion about that position through the upcoming budget process. So we had a couple of items on our agenda that were technology related. So that naturally led us to a discussion, and we actually had some folks in the audience who brought up similar concerns. You know, how do we serve that population that possibly doesn't have access to or can't afford internet access or computers to utilize all this technology that we're making available. So I know initially some of the data shows that, you know, there's not as big of a population as we may think, but I think we have to be a little bit careful about relying solely on that. But we also talked about some things that we could do to make that easier for some of these families. I know, well, we all know as a district that Comcast offers a program, but it's a very lengthy process, right, to get the Comcast internet access. But recently, Verizon started really advertising a lot that they were offering a similar program. So I think we already had a little bit of information on that, but we were going to look for some additional information to share. And then Dr. Malash, your name came up because an audience member was talking about how the library might be, you know, is a great option for people, and that wouldn't it be great if the library was open 7 days a week for our community. And then I can't remember who reminded us that you were on the library board, so we were all going to follow up with you just to, so consider yourself warned about that. So again, as I mentioned, we had some folks in the audience, and most of the conversation was about the technology, the use of it, and how we could explore ways to help families that might not be able to take care of to take advantage of it, and also families that, you know, might be able to participate in it at one portion of the school year but not in another, and how do we identify that. So it was a great conversation. There was a lot of back and forth on kindergarten as well, but we already, you know, we had a pretty detailed presentation on that. So with that, any questions? All right, back to you, Mr. Goodwin.
Thank you. Great update. Next, we have BNF and Mr. Tomlinson.
All right. We also had a long list of items. A lot of them were updates, but a lot of them are kind of updates moving into concluding some large projects. So one thing on our agenda tonight we saw was a change order for generation installments at Johnson, Barclay, and Knight. There just were some extra costs involved with gas piping modifications, some circuit works, some electrical circuit work that needed to be done, some of the control units that turn the emergency lighting on and things like that needed to be replaced throughout the project. So there was a lot of allowance in the project, so the change order was only for $1,800 of additional cost for those 3 projects. Mr. Middleton provided us with an update on the parapet wall concerns at High School East. If you remember, during the roofing project, some movement in the wall was noticed by the roofing contractors. Work was stopped in order to investigate and find out what's going on. We then looked to increase the budget to see if we could have the roofing contractors complete the work to fix the wall. Our architects have done some boring work to the wall to actually find out what the construction is, because it was found that the parapet was not built to the plans that we have on hand. And after investigating that, it was determined that the work was outside of the ability of the roofers, but the roofers could complete their work. So the roof work will be completed, and then we will have to address the wall separately. And we're awaiting a final report and kind of list of what needs to happen to have that wall repair done. So that will hopefully be coming shortly. We also talked about the transformer room at East. If you recall, the transformer room, some structural problems. The transformer needs to be replaced and moved outside of the building. And then that section of the building needs to be refurbished or fixed up. And so we finally have contact with PSE&G. They're finally responding and talking with us. They are moving quickly, and we have to coordinate with construction, PSE&G, and the township for this. It also requires the entire building to be powered down for 48 hours in order to complete this. So we're hoping to do this over winter break because it needs to happen all in concert, or it could be a problem. One thing that was mentioned during the meeting was the construction officials are concerned with the presence of PCBs in the current transformer. We need to get that tested in order to figure out what the next steps would be for movement, whether or not some extra steps need to be involved to contain that, things like that. So yeah, so that one is a number of large organizations needing to come together and work together. So hopefully that will happen over winter break. We also were told that the HVAC replacement projects for both Kilmer and Carusi are out for bid, and hopefully we'll see them on our November 27th board meeting to approve those replacements. And we met at Kilmer, so we enjoyed the hum of the Kilmer Library air handler while we were there. So it is in need of replacement. The Beck locker replacement. So most of the lockers have been in place, and we've been told that just finishing work needs to be wrapped up, such as the fire extinguisher locations need to be painted differently. Just some of the other just finishing work to just wrap up that project finally can be done. There is a new door on the High School West Trainers Room. So before, in order to enter the High School West Trainers Room, one would have to travel through the boys' locker room in order to get to there, or outside. Those were your two options. There is now a hallway access door. There is also carpeting and other nice things that are going to be going into that room to kind of spruce it up. Some of the pictures we saw, there were just kind of like a pile of tables in a corner. So, the room needed some love, and happy to see that happen. The varsity baseball backstop work at High School West will begin in November. Although we awarded the bid in August, there was a holdup from the township based off of some permitting that was assumed. So now we can move on with that project. And if you look back at what we already approved earlier tonight, the bid for the security vestibules for both Payne and Woodcrest were awarded. And so that came out to, they were a number of bids between $730,000 and $530,000. And so the lowest bid was J.H. Williams Enterprises. And we've done work with them in the past, so we know them. So today is the 13th, and there's a kickoff meeting on the 16th. So things will be moving quickly. And permits have been sought, and work will begin shortly as well on the security camera and card access system at the high schools. Like I said, we had a lot. We talked about exterior lighting. So Mr. McCarty and Mr. Schofield have been evaluating the district exterior lighting. Meeting with PSE&G, one thing that was interesting that we talked about was the district lighting, while it's outside of the buildings, some of it might be PSE&G lighting, some of it might be township lighting, and some of it might be the school's lighting. And so again, we need all three groups involved to talk about lighting and fix lighting and change lighting. So one of the things we talked about was High School West stadium parking lighting, specifically the small square off to the side where there is no lighting currently. So I'll be working with the township on communicating that with residents and things like that. Usually by now we would have received an audit report from our exterior auditors. Unfortunately, the state has changed a rule, GASB Rule 75, which requires information from the state in order for us to complete our internal audit. Unfortunately, the state has not provided those numbers, and so the report that was supposed to be submitted on December 5th has now been moved back to December 21st. And hopefully the auditors will be able to meet with us on December 4th. I got two more. Food services. So if you remember, the food services bidding process was completely changed. We volunteered as part of a new approach to food services, where we needed to solicit bids on a per meal cost basis from providers. It was both difficult for us and for the providers. Unfortunately, the cost reimbursement method, which is what this was, really limited what the food service programs were willing to provide. So there's some other kind of like, equipment maintenance and other kind of like basic things that were happening under our prior contract, which are not in this contract because of the way it was bid out. And so I think we'll be moving. There's a potential to move to the old process.
So when we did it last year, we were told we had to do it that way. There now is legislation being introduced that says we may be able to go back to the old way. And I just mentioned that if we have that opportunity, that may be something that we take a look at, and if not next year, then, in the future, just because we're finding the fixed price contract method to be problematic right off the bat.
FS Direct, which is a campus-wide or a school district-wide calendar system that has been rolled out. Some training has been happening, and hopefully it will be fully operational by next year. This is the calendar that allows us to know if we're closed for snow, who to call and tell them that they can't have their evening events because we're closed for snow. Right now it's at the school district level or at the school building level, or we're calling the school building to figure out what they have on paper. So this will consolidate that.
It'll also allow us in-district uses as well when we need. I think I told the story last year. Dr. Mahan scheduling PD in the room, and I had scheduled contractors in the same room, and she suddenly needed to find a place for 213 people to have PD. So it'll help with those kinds of issues. It'll also help with outside user approval. Right now it is a paper system and a fax it over to the school kind of system, and this will allow us to do all of that electronically.
And the absolute last thing was that we're going to continue selling some unused district equipment on GovDeals. Last month we made $8,800 selling some old vehicles and disused equipment on that GovDeals. So we'll continue doing that as well. Are there any questions? Mrs. Judge.
Are the Beck lockers 100%? No.
97%.
Well, that's pretty good.
Dr. Bart.
That's
Mr.
excellent.
Bart?
That's
99%.
all right. Well, that's good to hear. Good to hear. I know.
So we've been told by Tuesday.
By Tuesday.
So
okay.
we're cautious.
It's not December yet, so okay. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. That's my only question.
Any more questions? All right, Mr. Goodwin, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thompson. Next, Human Resources, Mrs. Judge.
So, Mr. Tomlinson, this is how you do a report. So, because it's human resources, and I can't usually say much because most of our discussion is confidential, we did meet on at Kilmore last Wednesday, November 7th. In attendance was Mrs. Matlack, Mrs. Schultz, Mr. Tomlinson, and myself. And it was a relatively short meeting, and we discussed 4 job descriptions that are being modified to include ADA compliant wording, and we also received a negotiations update. And that's my report. Any questions? Seeing none, back to you, Mr. Goodwin.
Thank you, Mrs. Judge. Okay, next we have P&L with Mrs. Scarpolino.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. P&L committee met on Monday, November 5th, also at Johnson School, so that was nice. We actually welcomed Dr. Smith to his first administrative liaison committee meeting, so that was great. Dr. Malash was there also. I thought we should throw Dr. Smith into the deep end of the pool and let him run the whole thing, but Dr. Malash said no, so next time. We had a very light agenda. We had 2 items for discussion and information. We had no first readings and no second readings. One item was Assembly Bill 4483, which, and I will quote here, requiring school districts to close schools on religious holiday, including a list of holidays promulgated by Commissioner of Education if 10% or more of the students observe holiday, end of quotes. So obviously we were discussing this, there's no action taken at the time. I believe this is still in committee in any event, but obviously it would be something that would affect our school district greatly. We right now do not collect information on people's religious affiliation. If they practice any religion at all, we don't collect that information on students, so that would be difficult to determine. Also, when they use words like what do they mean by observe? Are we supposed to then question students on how observant they are or not? So like most things, good intentions, but there are unintended consequences that we will need to consider if this does come down the line. So we did discuss this. But luckily right now it's still in committee, and hopefully they will be asking school districts their input so that we don't have situation where, you know, we're scrambling to, you know, take care of the unintended consequences that would come along from a bill like this. Next, we talked about the district regulations, which were formerly known as the procedures. Dr. Malash and Dr. Smith shared that the regulations would be posted soon, probably uploaded by July, like the policies are now on the website. And we would start working in December to sort of solidify the regulation language, you know, making sure that they are cleaned up, that they are compliant with any changes that might be in regulations or administrative acts. And then, so if you remember, we did this about 2 years ago, I think, with the policies. So get ready to read a lot of regulations, because that was quite the project when I was first on the board. So again, we will start that work in December, to have it finished by June and have it uploaded in July. And again, using sort of the same format as the policies, although considering whether or not to have them as policies here, regulations here, or have the policy and then the regulation immediately following, just figuring out what is the most user-friendly for someone who's using it. We did have a few members of the public in our audience, and we did have some public comment. One person mentioned that the policy search is that's online is really user-friendly, so that was good to hear, that we know what we have already is user-friendly, so then how do we incorporate the regulations? And then we also had a great discussion about that Assembly Bill 4483, with a lot of good comments and questions coming from the audience, including, you know, some things I hadn't thought about, like if a holiday actually expands over multiple days, does that mean every day of the holiday is off? You know, so there really a lot of things to be considered. But it was a great, I think, lively and really well-informed discussion. And that's about it, because we didn't have, again, any policies. Any questions? Mrs. Judge.
So, about this 4483, have you, Dr. Malash, talked to your county roundtable or anything about this? Because we, on any given day, have like 95% because of sickness. You know what I mean? There's 5% out at any given day normally. So if you give 10%, are you guys writing a letter to?
So yes, so we've discussed it as a county. I've contacted our legislators. You know, just let her know, you know, our thoughts on where it is. The biggest challenge is we look at, you know, as Jane went through and talked about, what's it mean to observe? And again, it's information we don't collect, right? I don't have a database that I can go through and say, you know, that this family is Christian of some sort, this family is Jewish of some sort, or Muslim, or Hindi, you know, or whatever else, and then just the discussion, what's it mean to be observant? 10%, you know, what does that look like? You know, what will the impact be? But yeah, we've discussed that there's nothing, our county roundtable has not done anything formally. I know some of the other folks have also reached out to the legislators, you know, just let the challenges, you know, the unintended consequence of what we think it would be, and then just the whole local control discussion about what the role of the board is, you know, in terms of being able to make that determination about what school calendar looks like. It's one of the few things the board can actually do, you know, is make the determination on the calendar. So yeah, it's an ongoing piece. I will be surprised if it ends up going through and gets signed, but I think it's something we had to absolutely have the discussion before it comes out.
Mr. Goodwin.
That does bring up a good point, because it seems like that would having a list like that or a database like that could potentially be a liability as opposed to a positive, you know, because it could definitely be used in a negative way. So hopefully they think hard about that one.
Mrs. Judge.
Do any school districts collect religious public school?
Not that I'm aware of, Paul.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Okay, thank you.
Part of our discussion was how this just is like an anathema to anything that we do in this country. We do not ask people or talk about people's religion. You know, we don't. That's just not how we do things. So it's just, you know, just the gut reaction, let alone anything else, is like, no, like we shouldn't be doing that. But also something that was brought up, I was thinking more, you know, this is difficult for a district like ours that is very diverse, which is one of our strengths, but then, you know, we could have many, many days that we're not in session. But Dr. Malash pointed out, well, if you're a really small district and one family moves in that observes a certain holiday, that could cause the schools to close, and then are people then resentful or whatever of that family? So you know, there's a lot to be considered in this. Again, good intentions, but got to be thought through, hopefully. Any other questions? Okay, back to you, Mr. Goodwin.
Thank you, Mrs. Scarpolino. And finally, we have strategic planning and Mrs. Matlack.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. We had one item on our agenda, and that was the bond communication plan update. And Mrs. Wilson updated us on that. The website has been updated to include the bond information for each of the schools, and it's on their websites. Some additional informational boards have been developed, one with types of projects and another with a financial breakdown of the cost of the various projects. There's also been handouts available at the various PTA meetings and community meetings that we've been going to. And it's also posted on the district website. But Mrs. Wilson showed us some bookmarks that with bond information on one side and voter information on the other that will be distributed to elementary school parents that visit the schools next week. And that is for American Education Week, I believe. And those that are unable to participate will receive one from their schools, of course. And Mrs. Wilson has been sharing fast facts about the referendum on social media. There was a key communicators group formed about the bond, and they had their first meeting. And Dr. Malash has been very busy presenting at several PTA meetings. Seems like almost every night we hear that he's at a meeting, and some of the board members have gone to those as well. Last night, Mrs. Wilson, Mrs. Sugars, and I were at the Kingston Civic Association meeting, and Dr. Malash joined us after his 100th meeting of the day or so. He came and joined us yesterday as well, and that was a very well-attended community meeting, and we, Mrs. Sugars gave information, the factual information about the bond. Mrs. Wilson spoke about the communication plan and how people could get information, and Dr. Malash and everybody, we all answered questions that the community had. A very good meeting. I hope other community meetings are as well attended. A new list of community events will be disseminated to the board members so we can choose to participate in those. And an informational letter is going to be sent home to all parents in advance of the referendum vote on December 11th. We had some public comment, and there were some questions that were asked. So one question was the timelines for the completion of the work for the bond. The answer Mrs. Sugars gave was that this can't be determined until the district knows which questions are approved, but our architects are outlining different scenarios to be prepared. Another question was whether the state share of the projects must be used for these projects or additional projects. And yes, it must be used for these projects, and it comes in the form of debt service aid. Where can somebody get a copy of the district's long-range facilities plan? You can get that from Mrs. Sugars. Contact her. And another question about when will projects be completed at the alternative high school. And that, again, will depend on the referendum vote, but some of those are being considered for the 2019-2020 budget through our capital reserve program. That's about it. Any questions?
Can I just add, Ms. Matlack? So just to follow up, and I appreciate you going through talking about the different pieces, and there we do have a big push to be able to get people informed, right, to speak in the community, to speak in the public, and I was thrilled to be at Kingston, the opportunity to meet with our special ed PTA folks last night, spoke at a Rotary event, spoke with our CHEA, with their rep council. There are some large-scale community events that are still coming up that I would encourage people to come out and to talk, to ask questions, you know, and it's a great place for dialogue when people have very specific questions about the program. This coming Sunday, I'll be at Temple Beth Shalom, which is a community event, to talk about the referendum at 11:30, Barbara? At 11 o'clock. From 11 to 12:30, I think I'm scheduled, right, 11 to 12:30, Barbara? Scheduled at Temple Beth Shalom this Sunday, the 18th. On the 26th of the month, so the Monday after the Thanksgiving weekend, we actually, Lynn and Barbara and I will be up with Town Council doing a presentation to Town Council, just as an informational piece with where we are. On Saturday, the 8th of December at 9:30, we're going to be doing bonding over breakfast. CHEA, the Teachers Association, the Professional Association of the District, sponsoring a breakfast. So we're going to do a community meeting at Rosa. The breakfast will be out, I think it's like 8:45-ish, and then we'll start our piece at about 9:30. Again, talking about the referendum that weekend before. So we are always looking for additional events. I've had a great time going out and speaking to PTAs. Very informative, some very good questions with folks. One of the strongest pieces, there's an incredible amount of information on our website. I always encourage people to go on the website, look and see. It's continuously being updated. There's a tremendous amount of information that is there. There's an FAQ that's on there. A lot of the questions that have come up, we continue to post updates in the FAQ. If you're involved in a community group or there's someplace you'd like us to come out and speak, we will certainly do that. And again, board members are attending a number of the things that we'll update this Friday again when Janet sends the memo out. So you all, if you are able, can join us at some of these events to address folks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Nope. Oh, Mr. Tomlinson.
Just something that struck me in terms of the timing. We approved the vestibules for the two schools this evening, and those were contemplated as part of the budget that we passed in the first half of the year. That then the budget came into force July 1st. It's now November when we finally, after all of the specifications and all of the bidding process can happen. So it takes quite a while for just from go to get it shovel ready. So
Thank you for pointing that out. Good point. Anything else? Nope. Mr. Goodwin, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Matlack. And next, we have our second public discussion. This is an opportunity to speak on any item, whether it's on the agenda or not. If you would like to speak, please speak into the microphone clearly, state your name and address. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. The timer light will be green at the beginning of the 3 minutes. When the timer turns yellow, there are 30 seconds left to speak. When the timer turns red, please wrap up your time and please conclude your comments. Anyone?
Good evening. David Rossi, 102 Roanoke Road. First and foremost, I'd like to welcome back Mr. Eric Goodwin. It's nice to see your smiling face up there. We missed you. I know that there's going to be another working session before the end of the year, but I did want to take a moment to recognize Mr. Tomlinson for the 3 years of service that you've provided and your dedication to the community as well as the district. I wish you luck and that whatever it is you're doing next, it's fulfilling and rewarding. And Kathy, 10 years. And I've heard amazing things from anyone I've spoke with, your dedication, service, everything that you've been involved in, tireless over 10 years.
I would have had my husband come tonight had I known this.
So I do know that the things that you have been involved in will go further than just your memory, but they'll be felt by people in the community for some time. And I just wanted to finish up with saying that on behalf of Sally Tong, Laurie Neary, and myself, we look forward to joining the board, representing the community, and working with all board members as well as the administration in representing the community. And that's it. Thank you.
Jen Nadio, 224 North Madison Avenue, Cherry Hill, 08002. First, I wanted to thank both Dr. Malash and Mrs. Wethington and their team for coming and speaking about special education questions that a lot of our members had last night. Dr. Malash did leave for the other meeting, but Mrs. Wethington, they stayed with us till 8:20, and it was much appreciated, so thank you. Understanding there is a potential for a number of construction projects, depending the outcome of the bond vote, and obviously all project would be in accordance with ADA compliance. Are there any specific accommodations as it relates to our special needs students within some of these projects? Some is more innovative designs, which would provide greater accessibility, in turn creating a more inclusive environment, such as, but not limited to, bathroom designs, classroom designs, access areas like stages, outdoor recess areas, nursing stations. And what about the security vestibules and other existing entryways? Will they be updated to include automatic doors? Thank you.
Good evening, John Cafagna, 315 Roosevelt Drive, Carusi Middle School. On behalf of CHASA, we just wanted to thank the board for your tireless efforts in our negotiation process, which began spring last year and went all the way till about 2 weeks ago. We wanted to just thank you so much for the professional nature, being patient with us, and working through a great process. We're all very appreciative of all the work that you do. We also want to just thank all the board members, especially the ones that are leaving, for all your time and effort that you've put in and dedication to our children of the district, as well as the new ones that are coming in. Thank you very much.
Elliot Roth, 1809 Morris Place. Excuse me. Eric, welcome back. You look great. Glad to see you. I'd like to congratulate the 3 new board members on their victory. I'd also like to thank the 3 retiring board members for their service. I'll have more to say about you guys next month. So you can tell Tom to come next month.
18th. He's on for December 18th.
Okay. That being said, I've been an active participant in over a dozen school board elections, and this one was by far the nastiest, most obnoxious, and dirtiest one I've ever seen. The behavior of some of the candidates was reprehensible and an embarrassment to Cherry Hill and our children. The lack of integrity that was displayed makes me wonder about some of the people that believe they belong on this board. For example, lies presented as truth, personal attacks on others, stealing campaign signs and literature, sometimes from the private property of residents, extreme lack of knowledge about the duties and powers of a board member, blatant disregard for rules and boundaries, failure to supply basic information to the voting public to help them to make an informed choice, failure to show up at a public forum, or showing up and acting like an immature child, promoting a personal agenda rather than acting in the best interests of the children of Cherry Hill. I'd like to remind our candidates, whether successful or not, that our children are watching. Unfortunately, there are very few good role models in today's political scene, but I would hope that our board candidates would be different. A board member is expected to act ethically and with the proper demeanor and decorum. There are policies and procedures to be followed, but in my opinion, the overriding element must be to set a good example for our children. Mature adults can disagree on issues, discuss their views in a civil manner, act with integrity, and arrive at a compromise that is in the best interest of the constituents, that is, the children and the taxpayers of Cherry Hill. And when all is said and done, still show respect for the others and for other views. This is the way that we expect our board and our board candidates to act. And you should all strive to exceed our expectations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna Einhorn, 1017 Edgemore Road. Well said, Elliot. Thank you. I do have a couple of comments about your work session this evening. Don't we have schematic drawings of whose lights belong to whom at the high school? Somewhere? Since there was discussion of whether it's ours, the townships, or PSE&G.
We've been doing an audit of each location to figure that out. We have a new facilities director who's just trying to get a handle on all of that, meeting with PSE&G to see. We just have lights that are out. Is it just bulbs that need to be changed, those kinds of things. So he's just going through each site at this point and trying to get a handle on what is happening in each site.
Okay. And can we really hope that we're going to have the auditors here on December the 4th, or are we going to be postponed month after month? I know you can't answer that.
They'll be at the B&F committee meeting.
Oh, right. Do I dare get excited that we might have cafeteria workers one day after the presentation? Because I remember when we got rid of them and the trouble we had then getting food plans and things in place, and that, you know, we had to buy the equipment and still pay Aramark at that time. So I'm going to hope for the best in that regards. Thank you for, I was not here earlier and I apologize, I was at another meeting, but I would like to just say one thing publicly. Danny DiRenzo, those kids are going to miss you at West. Okay, truly, truly dedicated to the students of Cherry Hill, like no one I've ever seen that went back and helped out that school. So I'm going to miss you, and I know the kids are going to miss you. Thank you for settling the school administrator's contract so quickly. For 3 years, another miracle has happened, so I'm happy for all of us. Going forward, it's our town, it's our district, it's our community, it's our students, it's our buildings. And I would really hope that the rancor and dismay of the previous election goes away. People screw up, people did screw up, but no more public lynching on Facebook, please. We have to be in this together as a community. I know you all have done your darndest to do what you think is best for us, and I appreciate that. So good luck to everyone. It's not my farewell speech. I'm working on that, Kathy. Thank you.
I guess I'll bring tissues, too.
All right, thank you.
Miriam Stern, 121 Ashford Road. A few things, just a quick, just thank you for Dr. Mahan and to the, and the folks who are working on the kindergarten curriculum. I think I heard community involvement as kind of a constant theme, and certainly a lot of concerns beyond the academic portion of kindergarten, extending it full day. And I think that's very exciting to see the level of engagement and interest in just the full range of needs of kids at that age. So excited to see what comes of it. Also, just regarding the issue of the bond and the vote coming up, I think, you know, there's a lot of discussion about how the township and the school district, although are separate entities, have a lot of common interests, and it comes up with permitting and lights and all the other good stuff. I think it's really kind of a louder voice being heard. The community would like to see more and more, you know, ways in which wherever there are common ways for the district and the township to work together, for that to happen. So I guess I'm hoping to see more of that as well, just as a community member. And I think the last thing I want to mention, I heard at one of the presentations, one of the PTA meetings, that if the bond were to not pass, that it would be put up for vote again in a few months later. And I think, honestly, that's
confusing to me. I think if the community speaks and has a voice and votes and is not in favor of something, I'm not sure why it wouldn't be fully relooked at. Instead, just put up for a vote a few months later I think the cost was quoted as $38,000, which is enough to buy one-to-one Chromebooks for an entire elementary school in Cherry Hill. It just seems like a confusing effort if that's how the township decides. So, I think that's why it's a vote. It's a vote so that everyone can be heard and have a voice. I think there's a lot of discussion going on about the bond. So I guess I hope that would be really looked at hard, not something that puts a vote for again and again and then a hard look being taken. I think it should be taken after the first vote if the vote doesn't go the way that the district and the board have would like to see it go. So thank you.
Yoni Yaris, 422 Cherry Hill Boulevard. If there are a way possible for community meetings to be live streamed using the iPads or things we've got within the district, it's come up a lot on social media and other areas. And also the issues with agendas, having them provided would be really helpful. They're somewhat posted online, but then they've been disregarded according to tradition of what I've understood the last couple I've gone to, that especially at CNI, it seems to be a tradition that the agenda is blown out the door and gone in different orders. There's people I know who come with specific things they want to talk about, even just to go over saying, all right, we're going to be doing 3 first, then 5, then 6, just so people who come and do value their time. I think it's important. I totally understand why they get thrown, especially when you've got presenters. Be really important. That's also extend to Mr. Tomlinson and Mrs. Judge. I'll say more next month. You guys have been amazing since I've come back to town. Mrs. Judge, I think, has been there since just after I graduated, so I've had a chance to get to know her. So, sorry. I'll do more next month. But it's just to really applaud the effort that you guys do incredible work, and it is not the easiest. And also, has there been talk of what to do, especially on the county level, with what seems to be a trend under Mr. Murphy's administration? There seems to be a disaster at BOE when it comes to anything the district needs to get done, be it with the bond referendum, now with the audit. The trend doesn't seem to be Cherry Hill's the problem, it seems to be DOE is the problem. And what can be done to fix that? Because how can we get things done and be accountable if they're not being accountable themselves? So what can we do as the township on your side to be able to support what seems to be a catastrophe on the level of the state right now? So please let us know.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, if not, then I will close the public discussion, and I'll have a motion to adjourn. Mrs. Matlack and Mrs. Judge. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.